Welcome everyone to day two of Partner Week of the Marketing Practice. Across the week, we'll also be joined by a variety of experts, everybody from the channel chief, T-Mobile for Business, Will Taylor, the founder of BD Paths, James Hodgkinson at 360, ServiceNow, Cisco, to name but a few. So it's a really packed agenda. So please feel free to sign up to the workshops and the discussions when you can. So, for this session, I welcome Norman Guadagno, and we're really going to discuss partner versus direct. How can we close the chasm? So, welcome, Norman. I just want to do a few introductions. So, Norman has had considerable experience in the CMO tenor in marketing organizations, really focusing on growth, transformation, and driving revenue from a all-up direct, indirect perspective. So I'm sure that Norman can uncover some really interesting insights today, and I can guarantee it will be a great discussion. Okay, so Norman, shall we dive into some of the questions?
Absolutely, and it's a pleasure to be here, Ali, during Partner Week, and excited not only for our discussion, but also for the other discussions that are lined up. I'm eager to see how it all comes together.
Perfect. Okay, so we talked about this chasm between the partner, the indirect channel, and the direct channel. Do you think that companies are aligning strategically around partner initiatives, or do you still think that partner is very much treated as a tactical maneuver?
Yeah, it probably is the fundamental question, isn't it, Ali? Where many companies, I think, say that partners are strategic, but act as if partners are tactical. And in fact, what I often see is that there is partners are in some cases truly strategic, but the tactical may not be executing well, or partners are purely tactical and there's no strategy behind it. And the way to close that gap, to cross the chasm here, is for there to be a focus on both strategic and tactical. And if I could just click down on that one moment, oftentimes the gap exists because in the C-suite and at the executive level, there is a clear imperative for strategic partnering. But as that filters down into the organization, and then we'll talk about this, I'm sure, it loses that strategic focus and becomes tactical execution. And sometimes, frankly, it becomes somewhat burdensome or onerous tactical execution as it filters down to the organization. That gap is, I think, one of the biggest impediments to companies fully getting their value out of the partner ecosystems that they're a part of.
And why do you think that is happening? What are the barriers or the obstacles that are preventing that strategic insight from the top actually permeating down into the entire operation?
I think there are a few things, and across a number of companies that I've been involved in as marketing leader, I've seen a few things repeat again and again. One is oftentimes that at the executive level, we're all in on partners. This is key. We're going to make partners number one. It's a strategic foundation of the business. And then there's a real, if you will, gap between that and the plans that get created. And the plans tend to be very tactically focused. And an example of this, and one you often see for better or worse, is when there's a partners are a strategic imperative, but all of the engagement with the partners takes place down at the line level. And when there's not an actual set of engagements with the partner from C-suite to SVP, VP, down to directors, down to the field, oftentimes what happens is you have a disconnect. So that's one reason why we end up having this disconnect. A second reason is that many people in organizations, for better or worse, just are not educated on the value of partners, how to get that value of partners, how to partner well. If you reach into an organization to a random seller or marketer or finance person or engineer and ask them to explain how does the partner ecosystem work? How do we get value from our partners? The answers you get are might be all over the map. And so a lack of clear understanding throughout the organization of the value of partners is something that is key. And what we see is if you don't invest in education internally, you will find that there's a sort of reversion to the simplest thing to do, which in many organizations, because many organizations begin as a direct channel organization, direct sales organization, there's a natural sort of movement towards direct and away from a partnering motion. And so what do people do? If they don't know and there's no clear plans, they go to where they're comfortable. And we often see that people go to where they're comfortable. So it's a third reason why there's this gap from top to bottom. And a fourth reason, and one I suspect we'll touch on again later, is businesses, especially at scale, have often been built around an infrastructure that is primarily direct.
Mhm.
Because companies often start with a direct motion in sales and marketing, they build a tech stack and they build processes all around direct. And as they mature and they start to realize that they need to scale through partners and through the partner ecosystem, they're still relying on a primarily direct set of infrastructure and processes that they've layered on or tacked on partner components to. And again, it puts friction in the place so that it's hard to execute in a partner motion.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said around the education, because I know Jay McBain in his keynote speech really talked about um, the incremental growth in IT revenue, but the role that the actual partners and channel play in that, growth.
Yep,
Almost like
absolutely.
so, sort of accounting for 75% of incremental growth from last year. Um, and I believe as well, Michael Dell in the Ingram conference also talked about Dell's trajectory as to, they project 50 to up to 75% of their revenue is going to be partner. What do you think needs to happen? Is it from the top, or how do we educate these technology organizations around the value of the partner?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up both what Jay has said repeatedly, as well as what Michael Dell just recently said. Growth is predicated upon partners. So it is the clearest strategy for acceleration of growth. Partners will always give you better reach. Partners have deeply entrenched relationships with customers. There's so many reasons why it's key. How do we educate? Well, I think it needs to be a multi-prong approach, first and foremost. And first off, there needs to be clear understanding at the executive level of what the company's strategy is vis-a-vis partners. And that has to be well articulated, well understood, and everyone needs to buy into it so that they can instruct their organizations appropriately across the company to treat partners as a strategic component of the business. I think that's thing one. Thing two is, and here I'm going to show my bias, coming from the marketing organization, I think marketing has to take the lead. Marketing, for better or worse, is often very focused on direct customers. All of the go-to-market programs, all of the brand building, all of the demand generation tends to be focused primarily, not exclusively, on direct. And then there's the partner marketing piece. And that sort of rolls through the organization and they see, oh, marketing is doing direct stuff. That's our focus. So marketing has to take the lead. Marketing has to say, we have two audiences that we serve with the bulk of our programs, our direct and our partners. And if marketing takes the lead, that starts to filter through the organization. So when you're presenting to the revenue organization or another organization, here's our go-to-market plan, or here's our campaigns for the upcoming quarter. It's clear right from the start. This is our campaign. This is how the campaign exists for direct customers. This is how the campaign exists with partners and to partners. And by taking that initiative, I believe that marketing can help drive that internal education and transformation. So that's thing two. And then I think thing three, and this is especially as having come from technology companies, and uh, in most technology companies, there's an expectation that individuals across the business have some baseline understanding of the technology that the company produces and sells. That's fairly straightforward, and it's a good thing. If you're in cybersecurity or MarTech or data protection or any different set of spaces, you want to make sure that people understand the basics of the product, even if they're not a direct seller or a direct marketer or in direct CS, they should understand that. I think what has to happen at the same time that people are onboarded and they get an overview of the company, the history, the products, the customers, there needs to be and the partner ecosystem overview right from day one. And that I think is an opportunity for marketing, communications, HR to work together to really ground employees from day one in the fact that we fuel our growth through both direct and indirect, and we have to understand both of them.
Yeah, so just trying to unpick some of what you said. So, we talked about the education, but you also talked about marketing to take the lead. Um, and how do you think there's a organizational issue there where normally you see the marketing team, you will have a partner marketing team. Are you arguing for there to be a slightly different model where there is closer alignment between direct and marketing to infuse everything from brand to product, etc.?
Yeah, Ali, you threw me a little bit of a hand grenade there because we're touching on marketing organization structure and how they're built, and that becomes something that's unique for each company and for every marketing leader, and we all have our own perspective on that. I do believe that the future. Let's sort of look at the future and then work backwards. I believe in the future there needs to be a set of people who are focused on partners. That's partner marketing, it's enablement, it's MDF management, it's joint programs. That's a normal function. But I also believe that well, it's the senior leadership inside marketing, the CMO, that person's directs, need to all have if you will, a foot in the partner camp as they're thinking about any program that they bring to market. And it's incumbent upon that team to maintain a certain degree of if you will, diligence around partnering and vigilance to make sure that it doesn't get taken off the table too often. So I think that's this future state. Many organizations, however, are not yet evolved to the point where that is ready to happen for any number of different reasons. Some are, some aren't. There needs to be a strong partner marketing organization. It needs to have a strong leader. It needs to be a peer organization to the other components of marketing, whether that be product marketing or comms or revenue marketing. And let's touch on the thing that invariably you get to when you're looking at the metrics and the KPIs and all of that. The marketing organization has to have responsibility for direct and for partner. It has to look at all of them. If it's not, there's going to be a disconnect ultimately between the strategic imperative of partnering and the tactical execution of let's run a campaign or let's get some demand generation going.
Yeah. So, one of the things that marketing's responsible for is obviously their own brand. Do you think there's more that can be done there to validate or almost convince the partner that, we're better together? So getting them to really understand the brand that they're working with and therefore how that fits with their brand and how they can create more revenue.
Yeah, so deconstruct that a little bit. And you use the phrase better together. And you know that phrase has been used many, many times by many, many companies,
Yeah.
right? Many, many times. And it's a good phrase because it in fact is true. It is true that you are better together. Now the partner, right? If let's look at a channel partner, right, they have a lot of vendors they work with. The vendors have to understand the value the partner brings to them, the value a channel or a distie or anybody brings to the equation, and the unique value that the two can deliver together. So when you say better together, it's really each company, each vendor should figure out how they make better together valuable, how they create a value proposition for better together that's unique enough. My company plus a partner, this is what it's going to deliver to a customer. So when a competitor plus that same partner go out, there's still some differentiation, right? And they also have to remember that you can't just differentiate, you also have to be distinct. And all too often, and I want to make it clear, it's not that this is wrong, but it's not all of the solution. All too often, vendor plus partner is a template where you drop in partner logo and you say, here you go. Right? And that's necessary certainly for certain things at scale. But if you step back and you think, hey, let's actually work with the partner to create a compelling, distinct story that no one else has, that's not only going to create value for the vendor, but it actually is something I believe the partners really love. They're interested in seeing how they can grow their business. That when you grow your business, that's the partner growing their business too. So I think that has to happen. And finally, I think that the marketing teams are very, you know, I hate to say controlling, but they want to own the brand and they feel compelled to protect the brand. They should. That's part of their job is to make sure that the brand shows up in the best way possible in the right places. But what they have to also remember is it's not the only brand out there. And to the buyer, the ultimate customer, the partner brand might actually have more strength, be more important. And that's a little bit of a mind shift that I think companies often struggle with. They struggle with acknowledging that they're not necessarily the most important brand for a particular buyer. The partner might be. So how can they take advantage of that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because often you find that a technology enterprise will be very much pigeonholed into a IT discussion when the partner can actually bring you in from more of an outcome business decision maker lens. So they can actually open up that audience, can't they, for the technology brand? So they both support one another. So we've talked about.
Let's just jump into that for a second because you said something really interesting, right? Think about the buyer journey. At different stages in the buyer journey, vendor, partner, vendor plus partner are going to have different weights and different importance. Thinking about it through the lens as a marketer, like I want to be able to deconstruct that buyer journey and then work with partners to know that, oh, at this stage of the journey, this is where it's really important that the partner shine. At this stage of the journey, it's really important that my value proposition shine. Here's how we get to close together. So actually thinking about it through that lens of the buyer's journey helps you ultimately when you think about the buyer persona, right? Who is the ICP? What is the journey that they're going to go through? You actually find that you can deconstruct it and create unique opportunities for specific plays for both brand and partner along the way. And I think that could be an even better step forward and a great evolution for marketing organizations.
A great point, Norman. So we've talked about, respective brands showing up and where you dial up the partner brand versus the technology brand along the journey, which I think is really interesting because we would normally look at it very solely as the technology brand customer journey. From a product point of view, there's a lot of opportunity at the moment. If I was a product marketeer, to really reach out to the partner community because I'd want them to know as much about the product as possible so they can innovate with my product and grow revenue. They can make my customers sticky. And if you're a platform technology provider, they can do more and you can generate more revenue. What advice would you give to the product marketeers around to sort of really leverage and enable those partners to be able to sell and co-innovate?
Yeah, and that is, I think, key in technology products where there's fast innovation and evolution that goes on. And oftentimes, rightfully so, product marketing and product management are trying to just drive as much of that as quickly as they can. And they may get input, but they spend a lot of time talking with customers and they spend a lot of time creating use cases and things of that nature. Let's peel back and suggest that the partners, particularly the partners that are seeing real world applications of the products, particularly in the context of other products that have to integrate with it, in the context of other platforms it may have to integrate with. They can be a feedback mechanism as on an early and regular basis for product marketing. They can be a test bed for ideas, and they should be part of that. And they can also be a key part of the early release program, right? Product marketers, of course, want to do early releases and get feedback. And a lot of companies, are driven by product-led growth where the customers get to try it right away. But seeing clearly where the partners fit in that and using them as a feedback mechanism during that is key to product marketing as well. And I would even go so far as to suggest that when you're at those earliest stages of ideation, right, it's so valuable to get a point of view from both the partner and the customers, right, and bring that together to a holistic point of view for the next iteration of the product. And the final thing that when you and I have talked about this as we were preparing here, is the great value of competitive intelligence that you get from your partners. Right? They, of course, are going to respect the information that has to remain confidential to one vendor or another, but they're also going to tell you a lot about how customers react, how things are experienced, what works and doesn't work, what customers are buying or not buying, why they're looking for this combo plus that combo, which challenges they're facing. That is a terrific input into the entire sort of competitive intelligence ecosystem that product marketing, product management, others inside the organization are constantly using to figure out positioning, new functions, new features, how to deliver a message, how to create that value proposition. So I think there's a rich opportunity to get product marketing much more deeply involved in the partner ecosystem from day one.
Yeah. No, so basically you keep partners close.
Keep them close. Yes.
And then one of the things that we're seeing more and more as well is the need for organizations to see a pipeline or transparency in the pipeline from, top of the funnel right down to the bottom. At the moment, though, again, there's difficulty, it appears, in the industry where we have all of the platforms in terms of the likes of automated platforms like Marketo, Dynamics, other technology platforms are available, and Salesforce CRM tools, all of the intent tools, etc., very much set up for direct and being able to track that, but a lack of both visibility and accountability from what partners are doing, because often they will be prospecting to exactly the same companies when, I hate to say that better together phrase, they could be doing a lot more. Is that something that you see, Norman?
Yeah, it's interesting, Allie, and I have a point of view that based on my own observations, others may disagree with, but I think it's worth having a discussion. If you roll back to how most tech companies build their MarTech stack, They tend to build from the ground up with a focus on direct, on deconstructing attribution, understanding the direct pipe, understanding where leads come in, tracking revenue, understanding how the pipeline is influenced. And then somewhere along the line of that evolution of the tech stack, they say, oh, partners. Okay, well, we need a partner portal or we need to track partner over here. And oftentimes it's done manually. So what you end up with is, for better or worse, a lot of companies have built a big, beautiful house of technology. And then they said, oh, wait, we need a swimming pool. There's no room in the house for the swimming pool, but they're a little, okay, we'll build a pool here. And then we'll connect it and we'll build a little walkway, and that's how we'll get to and from the pool. And like, oh, right. And maybe the pool's not the best analogy. Maybe they need an air conditioning system. And then they have to rewire everything, right? When you think about how it impacts every room, which pick your favorite metaphor, the tech stacks are strained because they're so direct centric. And then you attach partner information to it. And yes, the integration and the APIs can be great. But there's a mindset that reporting is driven so much by direct. So if that's the problem, how do you solve it? Well, you really can't afford to rebuild the entire tech stack. Let's just be honest, right? We all know that. But you need to start from the reporting down. What are you going to report on? And make sure that you can see the key movements and stop reporting direct in this meeting and partner in this meeting as if the two things are not related. Take a more holistic view on this. And every team struggles with this. I've struggled with this in my own teams. I've seen it with my peers and other colleagues. It's a struggle. But if you are strategic about partners and you're infusing it into the organization, you can't have a conversation around pipeline that's just direct. You have to have a conversation around pipeline that's pipeline and deconstructing what's happening with marketing, what's happening with sales direct, what's happening with the channel, and be able to really start to look at them holistically and also acknowledge they're not independent things. They're all actually tightly coupled. Movement in one is related to movement in another. Whether that's up or down, movement in one, whether it be partner, direct, or sellers, is related to movement in the others. And understanding that movement, that's a second order effect, is actually something really interesting for organizations to start to really dig into and see if they can optimize. If partner's up but direct is down, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But do you understand why? Do you understand what happened?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So we've talked a lot at the moment around advice to marketing organizations as well as the partner marketing function. But we've given partners a bit of a get out of jail card at the moment. So I know, listeners on this session will also have, challenges with partners themselves. So given the opportunity and talking about the ecosystem and trying to bring the both together, what should partners do really as well to support technology companies, but embrace the opportunity for closer alignment?
Yeah, and we don't want to give anybody a get out of jail free card. Everybody has to have skin in the game. And some partners do this really well, other partners are still evolving. The partner has to educate the vendor, and not simply on what they can do for the vendor, but what they do. Most vendors don't understand fully the capabilities of partners, especially large partners nowadays. And there may be people in the vendor who understand that, but at a holistic level, there's not a deeper understanding. And I think partners, it's incumbent upon them for their brand to be able to tell a story that's richer. Right? So that's one thing. The second thing is, and this is key in every business, there needs to be relationships, as we said earlier, at every level. If the C-level and the CEO, their only relationship with the partner is a handshake and a yep, how you doing at once a year or something like that, that's actually diminishing the opportunity for real alignment, right? And that's incumbent upon both sides to bring that together. CEO, marketing, sales, product, customer support and service, finance, like at each level inside the organization, in each organization, make sure you understand what's driving the partner and what unique value they can bring. Partners often have tremendous training capabilities, for example, that vendors don't usually fully understand or take full advantage of. So there has to be that as well. And then I think that partners many partners are very plain and direct spoken, and I appreciate about them. My own engagements with partners, they're clear. Like, hey, doing this because this is what our customers want. Vendors have to, again, listen carefully. Partners have to be clear. Like, we love your product, but our customers are buying this other product right now because of these reasons. What are you going to do about it? And if they can deliver that in a proactive, consistent fashion back to the vendor, it helps both sides evolve and grow. There is almost nothing, and I'll go so far as to say there's nothing in the technology world that's static. Needs are constantly changing, capabilities are constantly changing. We haven't even talked about AI on this conversation, but we all know that that's having profound impact and change on how tools are used, which tools are prioritized. There has to be a dynamic interchange between partner and vendors on an ongoing basis. And I'll take it one step further. Sometimes vendors have to realize that they also need to partner more aggressively with other vendors, as well as channel and distribution partners and integration partners. It is, and this is what Jay talks about, it's an ecosystem, right? And thinking about it through an ecosystem lens means that, again, back to my own function of marketing, think about the ecosystem and how not just you plus a partner, but the ecosystem is better together. Right? Even the biggest of technology vendors, the Salesforce and the Microsofts and the others of the world, they rely on the ecosystem tremendously to create that value. Smaller vendors need to learn from that.
Yeah, most definitely. Do you think that, um, then technology firms do enough to enable partners? So I'm thinking about the multiple programs in terms of training, upskilling. There's marketing development funds and programs. But particularly you've mentioned, the key acronym, the AI. Do we think that vendors are in a good place to, you know, take partners with them, upskill them to capitalize on that growth?
And I think this is a challenge. First of all, there are vendors that are doing it exceptionally well, and they should do more of it, and they should share their knowledge, as many vendors do. There are vendors that are focusing on some of the newer ways in which technology can create value. For example, ecosystem-led growth as a model that can create value for multiple vendors and multiple partners in a real world scenarios. So I think there are many that are doing it well. I think there's also a lot of vendors that are not prioritizing it sufficiently. And that is, if partner is not in your top three, then you're probably not where you need to be. And I say that knowing that now, of course, many companies, there's a lot of priorities. There's catching up in products, they're dealing with AI, there's customer issues, there's all sorts of things. But the reality is that the world is moving towards a partner-driven model, and you need to prioritize appropriately. And I think that every company needs to be sufficiently self-reflective to say, are we just saying partners are important, or are we actually living and breathing that partners are important? And vendors have to do that regularly, and partners have to say, which of these vendors are really delivering for us? Because guess what often happens is, as you well know, most partners, particularly the bigger ones, are going to take on all the vendors they can. But the proof is in the pudding of how much actually moves through them or how much they invest in education or promotion. Right? Partners need to show their vendors, like, hey, you're not cutting it relative to some of the other vendors we're working on. What are you going to do to step up? And so this is a true ecosystem model. And one shouldn't look at partners as just something like we have to do. Like, yes, we have to do it, but we actually should want to do it because it makes everything easier, honestly, and it gives us more and more fuel for growth. And the biggest partners out there are hungry for innovation, for new products, for engagement, for deep partnerships that can help them grow as well. And so this is truly the classic, there is a win-win scenario here if you make the investment. But I will go back to companies need to really look carefully at are they truly treating it as both strategic and tactical versus just saying it's one and executing on the other.
So we're coming to the last few minutes. So some of this is such a big topic, and it may appear daunting to some people watching
Ah,
this because you have to bring the whole organization with you. And for some, it's a change of mindset. What could be some practical steps or advice you would offer for our partner marketing and marketing colleagues into FY25 to start to slowly move the dial?
that and I think there's some things that are simple and may even seem trivial, but I'm a big believer that small changes have mass impact over time. Marketers, go through your material and whether it's presentations, anything else you're preparing, campaign documents, campaign plans, and look at where partners show up. If it's the appendix or and then here's how we're going to execute for partners, rethink it. From the beginning to the end, think about customer and partner. Right? So just make a small change in the way in which you construct campaign plans, marketing plans, other things that right from page one thinks about customers and partners and has that balance. So that's one thing that you can do. Two, I think that everyone, when they refer to how the company does business, needs to remind themselves and others again and again, X percentage of our revenue comes through our channel. X percentage of our education is delivered by our partners, right? Whatever those are, and those should be elevated for everyone at the top level. And then I think the third thing is really a little bit of fun, for lack of a better word. Like partners love getting together and having an opportunity to learn, to talk, to discuss. Open your open yourself up to those formal and informal gatherings with partners. I've seen some really, really terrific people in the field who spend so much time with partners, vendor people who spend time with partners, partner people who spend time with vendors. Let's make that something that happens across the entire organization. Open yourself up to partners coming in once a quarter to spend the day with you. Open yourself up to the reality that when you're reporting on it, and I know it can be daunting because you got pipeline, you got revenue, you have all of these things happening, opening yourself up to the fact that, wait, can a partner solution help me solve this problem versus just my having to figure out how to solve it direct again?
Okay, so summing up then and trying to encapsulate some of the key themes that we've discussed over this 45 minutes. Um, we've talked about, or hopefully we've argued the case for better alignment between indirect and direct, and not having the partner on the periphery, but more integral to the whole business operations and not
Yep.
the marketing operations, and to leverage the value of the partner ecosystem in terms of the value, in terms of the conversations they have, the contacts they deal with, the market insights that they have, that essentially partners are your best friends. What would be your partner, Norman?
Yeah, I think let me make one more point there because it's key. And this is direct to anybody out there who's a partner marketer, whose title is partner marketing at any level. You need to get more aggressive. You need to be part of the conversation. You cannot allow yourself to be put in a corner. You cannot allow yourself to be a peripheral function. You have to bring yourself closer to the core. And so this is a little bit of a call, if you will, to the partner marketers out there. You have a critical function. Don't allow it to be marginalized. Make it central to the discussions. And I think that that's a key takeaway here for everyone involved. And it's a takeaway for the CMO. Don't forget that your job is to grow the business. Find the biggest, best lever you can to grow the business. And it's often partners.
Thank you, Norman. It was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
thank you, Ellie. It's terrific. I know we could go on for hours about this topic.
Okay, thank you.